This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, just before we get to the meat and potatoes, come along with me here and talk today about your first piece of vinyl, because today is Vinyl Record Day. And we asked listeners earlier on for the first vinyl LP or 45 that they bought, and I'm sure you can remember yours.
Absolutely. The first LP was Rubber Soul, the Beatles.
Nice.
When it came out.
Okay.
And you can't find the original version anymore. A lot of the songs, there were a couple of songs they yanked off of there in subsequent releases.
Ooh, do you still have yours?
And the first 45 was Up on the Roof. I can't remember the artist's name, but it was the original artist.
I think that's the Drifters.
Oh,
right?
The Nylons.
Up on the Roof, when this old world starts putting... that one?
Yeah.
Great song. Yeah. Okay, nice. All right. Let's talk an election campaign, which apparently hasn't started because they're not calling the election for another 2 weeks, but the CAC have decided to waste no time in making an election promise. What's going on here exactly?
Well, $1.8 billion for social housing, which has already been challenged by the Liberals as being insufficient. But yeah, this is the thing. It's a great thing when you're when you're the incumbent, because basically what you can do is, behave like you're still in government. You can make all these promises, knowing that, you can kind of keep them. It has been pointed out over the course of the day that the CAC did not keep its original promises in 2018 about social housing. But, it's not about the long term, guys. It's about the short term. And expect to hear more of this. But it was great to see the communique come out as well, because it was clear. It was clearly an electoral document, and Legault was careful not to describe himself as the Premier of Quebec, but rather leader of the Coalition Avenir Quebec, even though he was, I guess, working in an official capacity, even if he's introducing candidates. But that's the beauty of it. And once again, here's an example of the CAC outperforming everybody else. I mean, this is it. What people will remember over the course, if they remember anything of it, is going to be $1.8 billion social housing, time to move on. However, I got to tell you guys, this whole the other development today, the ruling on Bill 96 is not good news for the sitting government. This is a huge counterbalance to any advantage they may have, because once again, here is another cocktail napkin law which has been shredded by the courts. And it's rather interesting, because it's not about, ideology. It's not about some sort of abstract about, protecting the identity of Quebec. It's a matter of deliberately creating inequalities within the justice system in this country. I don't want to talk about the nation. I want to talk about the country of Canada. You can argue your case in French or English anywhere in this country. And what the CAC was saying, what they were trying to do, what perhaps sounded like a good idea over a couple of cocktails a few years back, was, no, you know what? If you want to argue your case in English, that's fine. If you want to submit the documents, that's fine. However, because this is Quebec and it's the common language, French is the common language, we're going to shove the Constitution Act of 1867, or some of us like to refer to it still, the British North America Act, to one side and say you have got to pay out of your own pocket the translation for those documents. Completely illegal, an egregious assault on minority rights. And another reason why, rather than describing this as a reform of Bill 101 or, an attempt to buttress, to protect the French language, this to me, and I think to a growing number of Quebecers, can be perceived as the wouldn't you be happier living someplace else law. Yeah. So honestly, I'm glad that this ruling came down. I heard you, I heard Julius Gray earlier. I think he's 100% right. Will they appeal this? It's not their money, so they'll take it up in the Supreme Court. They will get the same reply, because it's barely, it's an unassailable argument. It is the law concerning the law. You can't turn around and sort of improvise this stuff and say, look, Quebecor colonists, look what we did. Didn't we do well? That doesn't count outside your bubble. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the various opposition parties do with this. I'll apologize in advance if I'm wrong at this very moment in time, but thus far it's radio silence from the Liberals because, let's face it, they're not really against Bill 96. They think it's nitroglycerin. They don't want to, shake it up too much. I'm sure I'll be hearing down the road from the Canadian Party of Quebec and so on. But, another example, along with Bill 40, along even with Bill 21, that these are basically petty, nasty, targeted attacks on linguistic minorities in this province. And honestly, the only reason it's being done is, quite frankly, because they can.
I bet it'll also be media silence when it comes to French coverage of it, though, for the most part, at least from the usual suspects that we hear from.
Well, I mean, it is being covered in the French media.
Yeah, La Presse has already got it.
La Presse, of course, but the Journal de
La Presse
Montréal
has got it, and we've got it at MontrealGazette.com. Although we picked up the wire service version of it, and we're seeing reaction coming out thus far from those who are the interested parties. Obviously, the lawyers who argued the case, the English Language School Board of Montreal, English Montreal School Board, rather.
You know what I mean. I meant the usual
so you mean the
suspects,
Richard
like Richard Martineau,
of course. But you know what? Here's the thing, guys. Okay, it doesn't matter. Richard Martineau, that whole crew, they don't matter. What happened today is that Francois Legault, being, attempting to be this little linguistic Napoleon, marching back and forth in the backyard saying he's going to protect everything, tripped on his spurs and fell flat on his face, and not even on the major stuff. This is a procedural issue. This was it's almost like, you could almost describe it as a housekeeping issue in terms of translating documents. But here's another example of the Premier of Quebec and his entourage and his little finger puppets like Jean-Alain Barrette not doing their homework. And the contempt that they're showing for the legislative process in this province, or if you want this nation, does not bode well for a second term with these people.
Are you waiting? I was half expecting, and I'm still not sure the day's not over, although they came out with this ruling on a Friday, waiting for Simon Jolin Barrette to come out and say, well, this doesn't mean anything because this, we've had this thing with the Quebec Superior Court judge before. This would not be the first time where he would address the decision and say, well, we're going to appeal it anyway, even though it goes to court, they say by November.
I think he'll wait for Monday, if only, not because he's going to study the judgments, but simply because he'll get better blast radius with his reaction on a Monday morning as opposed to a Friday afternoon. But even so, but this is another, hallmark of this government. They know they're wrong, but they're going to go through the whole process. There's nothing, with all due respect to Justice Corriveau, the ruling is not very abstract. It's not very arcane. It's pretty straightforward. You are creating a prejudice for people who can't afford. And by the way, for people who are saying, well, what's the big deal? I can translate stuff. No. Court documents. If you're arguing a court case, official translation, a certified translator, that is very, very, very expensive.
And from what I understand, not that many of them here to begin with, right? This is not exactly a job that anybody who can translate can have.
No, not into legal terms, right? Which is why the concern was about things being treated in a timely manner and not allowing people access. This is a good.
Well, absolutely, but how is it that amateur legislators here on the show, the three of us, could think of this? And apparently our duly elected officials, that didn't go through their heads, or did it go through their heads and say, we don't care, we just want to get the language buzz in?
That's more likely. Right. Okay. Yeah. Jim, I got 30 seconds here. What's this deal about the Anglo vote actually showing up? What makes you believe that's now going to be an issue?
In 30 seconds, I've just based on a conversation I had with some friends this week, the whole my vote doesn't count. I know it's being courted by everybody, even the CAC. But wouldn't it be interesting, and we'll discuss it at length another day, but wouldn't it be interesting if a lot of Anglos come election day said, listen, a pox on all 5-6 of your houses, I got better things to do with my time. It's not going to make a difference. I hope it doesn't happen, but I have a sneaking suspicion we may see that.
James MENNIE, the Montreal Gazette. Jim, have a good weekend.
You too, guys.